Hi, I'm Jonathan McHugh, Secretary of the Guild of Music Supervisors. We're here at the State of Music and Media, the first annual conference held by the Guild of Music Supervisors with interviews from our friends from Grammy Pro. We're lucky enough to sit here with composer extraordinaire Mr. Chris Beck. How are you, sir?
Hi, nice to meet you.
So tell us about the panel. How'd you think it went?
I think it went great. I'm used to being on panels with 5 other composers and getting a couple minutes to answer one thing, a couple minutes to answer another thing. It's nice to sort of get a chance to really go more in depth into things.
Mm-hmm. And so the relationship with the music supervisor and the composers is kind of a really interesting one, where they're both doing separate things, but their points are the same. They have to deliver the sound for the film, the emotion, and the aesthetic that comes with it. How do you find working with music supervisors have been for you throughout the years?
Well, I think like anyone else who you have to answer to when you're working on a film as a composer, they can make your life brilliant or they can make your life miserable. I think it really all depends on the personality
Sure.
Of the music supervisor. The vast majority of them are smart enough to sort of give me and the filmmakers the space to work together, and as long as that's going well, to stay on the sidelines. And obviously, as a composer, you welcome any amount of reasonable input from anyone. So it's not like I'm saying the smartest thing is to never say anything. But I think where a music supervisor really needs to get more involved is when there are problems with the composer and how they're communicating with the filmmakers, or if the composer and filmmakers are going off in a certain direction that maybe isn't the smartest direction to go to vis-a-vis what the studio is looking for. Mm-hmm. I think that's when the music supervisor can really become much more involved in helping solve those problems. But as long as things are going great and the music is sounding good, just to leave the space for the
I think part of the what I call it in between the lines aspect of being a supervisor is you're in the edit room, director, producer, composer, editor, and it's really about, okay, well, how much is my input? Where do I put my input? Do I need to put it? Do I need to say anything? Do I not? And like you said, I think you're right. There's a nuanced business to it, and supervisors need to be the glue in helping put things together, but not step on the process. Because to me, that intimate relationship between the composer and the director or producer is something that is super important to just let it roll.
Right.
So you've worked with John Houlihan, our president, before, right?
Yeah.
How many films have you done with him?
Well, he says 9, but I'm sure that's some kind of a lie.
So that's a number of films, though. That's some repeat,
it's a lot.
That's some repeat business.
And not only is it a lot, but also we did the movie we worked on together first also happened to be, for both of us, our first film.
Which was that?
It was called Crossworlds with Rutger Hauer. We talked about it a little bit in the panel. I think John described it as having costumes but no sets. It was very low budget, and it was an experience I'll always remember. It was my first one, so you always remember your first, right? I'm just starting to feel very nostalgic thinking about it now. That was our first. For both of us, our first film
So
together.
in a way, now you have a great shorthand with each other, right? Because you've done so much work together.
Yeah.
And I think that's really part of the game, is that repeat business where you can collaborate together on different films. So you as a composer, obviously, the Emmys, today's Emmy Day, right?
Is that right?
I think it is, right? Tomorrow. I'm sorry, I'm a day in front of myself. Sunday is Emmy Day. And for years, the Guild of Music Supervisors had been lobbying to try to get to be part of the Emmy process, and now that we're finally in your world, any hesitancy between composers and supervisors, it seems like what was a thing almost from the past, but now that there seems to be more of a coming together thing. Your world view is that it is kind of, you're both there to serve the film. There's not a separation of church and state, so to speak.
Well, I think when you use words like separation of church and state, you imply a real kind of absolute separation, and it's never that, because it is a collaborative process, and the music supervisor's in the room when I present my work. I'm often in the room when the music supervisor presents his or her work. and there's opportunities to comment on it. So I don't think there ever really was or is this sort of hard separation. But I think I mean, I personally have never had any kind of adversarial view toward music supervisors. In general, I could say that I maybe dread working with certain people in the industry, whether
like
they're
anybody.
editors,
Of
whether
course.
they're producers, whether
That's
they're
anybody.
So and maybe a few people on that list of people I dread working with are music supervisors, but I definitely don't feel as a whole that there's any kind of tension or conflict between the two camps.
Great. And tell us about some of the projects you're working on now and what supervisors you might be working with.
I am. I have Peanuts coming out in November, which
Another John
which I worked
Houlihan.
on with
Yeah,
John.
another John Houlihan film.
It didn't start out that way, but he was brought on partway through. And then after that, another animated film called Trolls, which is at DreamWorks, which I am working with Julianne Jordan and
Julia Michaels.
thank you, Julie Michaels.
They form a nice little team.
Although I've heard now something about Justin Timberlake maybe joining or something.
As a supervisor?
I heard he like worked on one song and got excited and like wants to
take
do
it
more
over.
or something like that. But that
Justin.
remains to be seen.
He's an
I
excitable
have no
boy.
idea. I've never met him or worked with him, so it's
I
exciting
worked
for
with
me.
him at the
I love him. I
Tremendous
think he's
guy.
great, and I think he's a really good musician. So I mean, I would be excited to work with him.
And for you, the process of animated versus live action, do you see, is there what's the discrepancy that you could, not discrepancy, but what's the differences you could talk about in those two mediums?
Well, I think fundamentally it's the same in that it's storytelling through music, and the challenges that face composers are the same. Which character's point of view do I take? What can the music say that's not being said quite the way the filmmakers would like it to be? Things like that. But there are some differences too. I think there's more room in an animated film to write more musical music because the entire thing is being created from scratch. The performances of the actors, namely, there's more room for the music to do its thing under a scene where the characters have been created completely whole cloth out of nothing, as opposed to, looking up at a screen and seeing, Robert De Niro and Julia Roberts acting out on the scene. They're giving so much to that performance. It's almost like there's less room for music to say something there because they're saying so much already. Which is not to say that the acting performances in animated films are lacking in any way, but just because of the way that they're created, there does seem to be more room in an animated film
So does that mean
for
that-
music to play a bigger role.
Does that mean, does it feel like for you to put a little bit more pressure on you to deliver that scene in a way?
No, it just means I can make it bigger and louder, basically.
Go harder.
I can make it more musical. It just seems like sometimes when you're working on a live action film, 2 notes is 1 note too many. But I never feel that working on an animated film. I feel like the sky's the limit, and I could. There's really room for a lot of music in an animated film. Plus, you get to work on it usually for over a year. So, I personally love having that kind of time to think about things
Dive in.
and spend a few weeks working on it, take a month off, come back to it. You always see things differently when you do that, and that's just not possible on a live action film. It's typically 6 to 10 weeks. So it's fundamentally the same job, but there are certain things I really love about working on animated films
Great.
that are different.
Well, we appreciate you being here supporting the Guild of Music Supervisors,
pleasure.
State in Music and Media. Chris Beck, thank you so much
Thank
for your
you.
time. Appreciate it.